Sales Smackdown.
Hi everyone, Adam Morris here with SalesFirst Recruiting. We are sales experts who meet a lot of people, ask a lot of questions, and find proven performers and culture fits. And I'm here today with our special guest, Adam Stites from Mirth Provisions.
Hey, Adam.
Hey. Adam, before we get going, would you tell our listeners what you do and why you agreed to a Sales Smackdown?
Sure. So Mirth Provisions produces an all-natural line of cannabis-infused beverages and several other different liquid cannabis products. So we're currently selling in Oregon, Washington, California, Arizona, just launched in Colorado, and we just recently surpassed our 600th store that we're selling in. So we sell into cannabis retailers or dispensaries.
And just out of curiosity, are there any other markets that you guys are planning to move into with like different legislation on the books?
Absolutely. So we're looking not only at U.S. states, but also at Canada right now. And the neat thing about Canada, unlike the U.S., is that once you have a base of operations there, you can then export to the rest of the world, unlike the U.S., which requires us to kind of essentially operate little businesses in every state that we're in from a manufacturing standpoint, because you can't produce a product in, say, Seattle, Washington, and ship it to Portland. Even though both states have a legal cannabis system, that's not allowed.
Right.
You have to stay within that state source of supply.
Okay. Now, I've got 5 questions for you, and I'm glad you told me that. But, you know, obviously cannabis-related businesses face a lot of challenges, and those of us who pay any attention at all understand the state versus federal dilemma right now. But what about stigmas? How have social stigmas changed over the past few years toward cannabis, especially in business?
Sure. You know, I guess before I get into the question about how it's changed in business, one of the things that Mirth has tried to do from the beginning, and this is based on the product that we produce, is to remove the stigma from enjoying cannabis. You know, I always like to use the analogy that if I had my mom and dad over for a barbecue at my house, would I be more comfortable saying, "Hey, mom or dad, do you want to go step on the porch and smoke a joint," versus would you like to try this delicious sparkling pomegranate drink? It's much more approachable, and it builds on the norms that we all have as it relates to alcohol, where it's socially acceptable to consume alcohol. And as a result, I think we're finding folks who normally wouldn't enjoy cannabis are willing to do so with our product, and that's the cool thing for me, is to break the stigma. From a business standpoint, it's been a dramatic shift, probably just in the last 12 months. We had certain ingredient suppliers we reached out to 12 months ago, and you know, everything would be great. We'd get a call back, and then they'd go to our website, figure out what we do, and they'd politely decline the account. That's now gone on its head, probably in fewer than the last 12 months, where some larger companies, public companies that you know of, are now actively pursuing us as suppliers. So I think from what's been happening in the public markets, what's been happening with public perception, that people are just generally, not only has the stigma gone away, they're seeing this as a market that they want to pursue.
Boy, that is really exciting. What do you think it's like? What in the last 12 months have accelerated it? I mean, is it just time in the market with legal cannabis, or do you think there's other factors involved?
So I think people have noticed since legislation's been passed that people are still going to work. Planes aren't falling out of the sky.
Right.
In many cases, we're able to better fund police, fire, schools. In Colorado, as an example, they are now generating more tax revenue in that state from cannabis than they are from alcohol. So net, I think consumers are seeing, even if they're not noticing all the facts behind what I just mentioned, they're seeing their local dispensary. It's just becoming a more normal part of life. From a business side, I think a lot of headlines related to the growth of the cannabis industry, particularly in Canada, are making folks more comfortable with the industry, and quite probably they see the size of it, and the greed glands are firing a little bit because they want to have a piece of what they see as one of the biggest growth industries that went from zero from a legal standpoint to, you know, people are talking about $10 to $20 billion.
Sure. Wow. So this is something you touched on a little bit earlier in the conversation, but Mirth Provisions both manufactures and self-distributes. Can you tell me about some of the obstacles you currently face with um, federal legislation and state legislation and the fact that you're distributing your own product?
Sure. So in some states, our corporate entity supplies to partners in each state. So these are licensee partners. So our business supports those licensees, and those businesses typically have existing manufacturing operations. They have sales operations. They have trucks that they're distributing goods on. So in the state of Oregon and Washington, I happen to own the licensee in both of those states. California, Arizona, and Colorado is a third party. But it's still the same fundamental activities that need to take place. And as far as state or federal legislation, from a federal standpoint, what we're doing is currently illegal. But we're operating under state law and state license. And prior to the Trump administration was operating under the guidance of protection of the Cole memo, which basically was an instruction from the United States Attorney General to the state AGs, instructing them that cannabis enforcement wasn't a priority, provided that these 5 elements were maintained in each state. That's to stop diversion in other states, keep cannabis away from children, keep organized crime out, and several others. So as long as we were doing that, the federal government essentially said, hey, we're going to stay, you're not an enforcement priority. We're going to let the states be the laboratories of democracy, let you guys do your thing, and we're going to stay out of that. With the current administration and Jeff Sessions rescinded the Cole memo, and so that's introduced a degree of, ambiguity and anxiety into the industry, at least for the first couple of months.
Sure.
But, like a lot of things related to the current administration, it's difficult to gauge what the perception is one day to the next. So that's the current state of affairs that we're operating under.
Let's get to sales for a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your model and how you move product into retailers and dispensaries?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So it's block and tackle. In a state like Washington, we have, which is where we started, we're able to get information from the state, so we know who our retailers are. We can only sell into Washington state licensed cannabis retailers. So finding who the customer list is actually very easy. We
Right.
can then take that, upload that into a CRM, divide it by territory, and then have the reps basically work door to door and going to call on these accounts. Typically the sales cycle is getting a meeting with the store's buyer, the manager, or the owner, showing them the product, explaining to them why it's different and better from other products on the market, giving them samples. Sometimes if infused samples are requested, those have to be manifested through the state system, and that could take another several days. We then follow up. We typically try, owing to the nature of our product, that it's a refrigerated product, to provide a branded cooler or a small refrigerator that's put in the store that stores our product, organizes it, also merchandises it with the flavor, the phenotype, and the price of the product. And so that's kind of the sell-in process.
Now, so you show up with some samples, and it's a can of Mirth Provisions, and you say, taste this, tell me what you think of the flavor. This one's not going to get you high, but when you officially buy it, those will have that will have cannabis infusion in it.
Exactly. Yeah. We many times, just because that's the quickest way, we don't need to manifest a sample through the state. We can bring some non-infused product for them to taste, show them the packaging, walk them through how we've been able to significantly boost sales at other retailers. And then if they say, hey, great, let's go ahead and get an order placed, we'll do that. Sometimes folks say, well, I really want to understand this experience that you're describing here. You're saying it's a really relaxing kind of a nighttime, your lemon ginger, it's an indica blend. I want to see how that tastes. I want to see that it works. I want to make sure that the cannabis profile isn't too green tasting. And in that instance, we then manifest an infused sample.
Got it. And what's the competition like? Do you find yourself competing for shelf space in the stores, or is your product unique enough that they find a way to get your product in there?
So we've had a pretty good run. We sell into approximately 85% of the retail stores that we call on. There's some stores that are in extreme rural areas that just doesn't make sense for us to service.
Oh, okay.
So once we're, so people try the product, they instantly see they understand, hey, this is the type of consumer that I can bring into my store, offering this product where perhaps selling joints or concentrates that speaks to a certain market. With Mirth Provisions products, I can speak to an entirely different market, and I can grow my revenue as a result. At that point, they'd bring on the product line. We'd actually help them beyond just the product line, but with some merchandising help. Again, I mentioned the fridges. We have a variety of different display stands that have targeted retail objectives. If that's to increase the average ticket of the retailer, there's a different point of sale that we put at the register to help support them with that goal.
Now, let me ask you this, because I've been a Seahawk fan and a Duck fan for a long, long time, and every time I go to a tailgate, there's always like people running around the parking lot tossing us Monster energy drinks, and they show up in the van. How long do you think before there are brand ambassadors out there tossing people cans of Mirth and saying, give this a sample, and it's infused? Like, are we going to get to that point in Oregon or Washington?
Not soon. I wish, Adam, I could do that, because one of our biggest challenges is trial. How do you get consumer trial when you have a product that I'm just simply by law, I'm not allowed to do that. So all of our product has to sell into a dispensary and then from a dispensary to a consumer. So I cannot do any sampling of infused product.
Got it. Okay. What kind of sales professionals perform best in your unique model?
I think the reps who do best have a good combination of being very relatable, but also very process oriented. In our business, it's not a long sales cycle, but you could call on an account on Monday and get an order on Thursday. But it's also not, hey, you've got these 10 accounts that you're able to work. You could have 120 to 200 accounts in a territory, and so it's being able to properly plan your time, distribute your time between, what are my A accounts, my Bs, and my Cs, and what's the expectation that I see each grouping of those on a twice a week, once a month, once a quarter sort of basis.
Last question for you. How can our listeners get a hold of you, and how can our listeners find a sample of your drink, which is called Legal, by the way, correct?
Yep. We have Legal, which is our all-natural sparkling tonic. We have Drift, which is our sublingual spray. It's the speed of a vape pen without the smoke. You spray it underneath your tongue, and you feel the effect in about 30 seconds. And we've just launched a all-natural herbal shot. So think 5-hour energy, but instead of caffeine, it uses cannabis and other natural botanicals to create a certain effect, whether that's focus, energy, or sleep.
Okay. And how can our listeners find that? Just at different dispensaries in their neighborhoods?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in any of the 5 aforementioned states, we're selling there. You can go to mirthprovisions.com, and we have a store finder to find a store near you.
Adam, thanks so much for hopping on this call with us. One thing I would love to do is hop on with you again, maybe in a year or two, and I'd love to see what direction we're heading and how legislation is affecting your business. Would that work for you?
I would love to.
Awesome. Adam, thanks so much. I'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Adam.